Well, I can't. Of course you can't.
We don't want you to.
Now this is in phrase F.
We're starting the class.
A month that's notorious for cold. A month that created the pearl miracle, as the Medrash says. Achashverosh took a liking for Esther in Chodesh Teves. So we have bad news and good news. The bad news is that I prepared a sheet of different things to discuss today on Hanukkah, and the bad news is that after I printed it, I left it at home.
Sure, you can take a picture of it and send it to you on your phone.
That's the bad news. The good news is that, Baruch Hashem, it was sent to me by email. But this is something that has been going on for many years. I remember when I took my final smicha by Rabbi Zalman of Pavsky, the Rosh Hashiva of Tinker Tmim. So there were, it's a lot of pressure. You feel kind of nervous, some anxiety, knots in the stomach, as they say. And there were a lot of different subjects that the test was going to cover, not just, it wasn't just one subject, it was a number of subjects. So as I usually do, I made for myself summaries, and there was one subject in the laws of Kriyas HaTorah that he always asked the students to know. And of course I summarized it all, it was all prepared. And as I'm walking towards the test down on Kingston Avenue, a huge gust of wind comes out. It sounds like from a movie. A huge gust of wind comes out, and all the papers go flying. And the Kriyas HaTorah paper that has everything beautifully summarized, all the opinions in a very complex question, got run over by a car and completely destroyed. So here I am showing up to this test without the paper. So I'm like, it's a shkacha pratis. It must be that he's not going to ask any questions on it anyways. But Ashkacha Pratis can work in many directions. And he did ask me that question. And I told him, with all due respect, but the answer to your question is under a car. I explained to him what happened, the gust of wind. And he's like, how can a Rav give that as an excuse when he has to answer the Shaila? So he said it has to be in the head and not in the paper. This is something many years later we see we're still struggling with. In any event, we'll discuss this maybe a little later more. Okay, I want to continue with our course of Awakening Like a Jew. Shkamas HaBaiker, halachas related to women specifically, even though most of these halachas are not specified to any gender, but we'll cover Hanukkah, some Hanukkah lessons that we can learn from the Hanukkah story, from the laws of Hanukkah, and some Musar Haskos. Okay, let's begin. So, one thing that's pointed out in the Rebbe's talks is the achdus of the Jewish people, the unity of the Jewish people that's exemplified on Hanukkah. And how do we find this? So obviously all the Jewish people celebrate Hanukkah, much like they celebrate every other holiday. Usually the ones that have eating and drinking and festive making, there's no reason why you shouldn't celebrate them. All the Jewish people celebrate them, that's fine. But there's, in a lot of communities, there's a lot of distinction made between Sephardim and Ashkenazim. Sephardim are considered one group, Ashkenazim another group, and sometimes we almost view each other as two different sects of Judaism. And we are two different sects of Judaism, but almost as if, there's more apart than there is similar. And that is not correct. And we know that there were a lot of different persecutions Sephardim went through here in Eretz Yisrael. And there's always been some friction between the two groups, unnecessarily. So from Hanukkah we have a lesson we can learn of how It's not that Ashkenazim are correct in Judaism and Sephardim are not correct, or Sephardim are correct and Ashkenazim are not correct. This goes both ways. We find that you have Sephardi Rabbanim who love it when they can just bash an Ashkenazi Pesach, or they can just bash an Ashkenazi custom. And you have also Ashkenazim who do the same. And both of these approaches are incorrect. Nobody should be bashing anybody else. Everybody can respect their own minhagim, their own customs, without touching and putting down others. I think that's a basic thing you're taught as a kid. You don't have to put someone else down to make yourself feel good. Just do something good. Right? So the same thing over here. And it actually shows an inferiority complex when somebody's constantly needs to bring up how old the Ashkenazim or the Sephardim are. What's your issue? You know. I went to a Verbergen recently where one of the speakers got up and he started his speech. So he started it, I am a proud Sephardi. I'm like, wow, this guy has a real inferiority complex about his Sephardism. You know, you don't need to announce that. You know, you're Sephardi, you're a good Jew, you're just like everyone else. There's no problem with being Sephardi. They actually told him, by the way, that 99% of the crowd were all Sephardi. You know? They're all Sephardi there. In any event, so how do we learn this from Hanukkah? We learn this from Hanukkah, from the Hanukkah miracle, or really the Hanukkah halachas. We discussed this in the past. I don't remember discussing the Hanukkah shir, but we have a famous debate amongst Rishonim regarding how to fulfill the mitzvah of Mahadrin, Min Mahadrin, the best of the best, super Jew, of how to light the candles. What we've explained in the past is that the basic level is near Yishu Beisai. Every family, household has a responsibility and an obligation to light one candle each night. That's it. That's the basic law. And therefore somebody, for whatever reason, doesn't have enough oil, doesn't have enough candles. We think, how can that happen? It could happen. You didn't light candles. You came back home 12 o'clock at night, and you don't have enough candles. I've gotten shilas like that before. You have no story. You're not waking up neighbors. What do? You light one candle, and you fulfill the mitzvah with a bracha. It's the same mitzvah. It's just not the mitzvah done in the Mahadrin way. So how do you do the mitzvah in the Mahadrin way? So we know there's three levels. There's basic, then there's Mahadrin, and there's Mahadrin Min Mahadrin. So Mahadrin is... This is from the Gemara and Shabbos. It says the Mahadrin is that you light in according to the nights. So you light one, then you light two, then you light three, the third night, etc. And then you have, that's Mahadrin. Mahadrin is where you light, rephrasing, you light per family members. So if I'm a family of two, me and my wife and I, 2 candles the first night, 2 candles the second night. If I have 10 candles the first night, 10 candles, according to the amount of people in the family, for every night. Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin then is lighting in accordance to the number of nights. Mm-hmm. So as we rule like Beis Hillel, it's 1 the first night, 2 the second night, 3 the third night, 4 the fourth night. So while the basic is just 1 every night, the second is based on corresponding family members, the third one is based on going up every night, or going down, as Beis Shammai says. We'll get to that later. But the question is, how do you view the top level? Is it a plus of the level below it, or is it an exchange of the level below it? In other words, is Mahadrin and Mahadrin that the Gemara says, is it saying, in addition to lighting 1 candle for a family member, you will also light 1 candle each night, add another one. So the first night you had 2 people, you lit 2 candles. The second night, you're lighting 4 candles. The third night, you're lighting 6 candles, so on and so forth. So this is a debate amongst Ashkenazim and Sephardim. The Rambam is of the opinion it's an addition. So in addition to that, every family member lights his own set of candles. That's Mahadrin. You do Mahadrin, Min Mahadrin, everyone lights an additional one each night. So the first night, everyone's in the family's lighting 1. The second, everyone's lighting 2. The 8th night, everyone's family's lighting 8, like tonight. So if you have 10 kids in your family who are lighting, that's a total of 80 candles, plus 10 shamashim. 90 candles, a lot of candles. That's the Rambam. The Sephardim. Ashkenazim, Taisva says, no. It's an exchange. If you want to do Mahadrin, then you light according to family members. Every family member lights 1 candle per night. 1. It stays the same throughout the whole Hanukkah. If you want to do Mahadrin and Mahadrin, then you only light 1 set of candles, but you go up each night. Not that each family member lights. So only the father of the home or the mother of the home, if there's no father, lights the candles. That's it. Nobody else lights in the house. That's how Tosfos, who was, of course, from Germany, Ashkenazim, rules. And the reason he says what he says is very simple. He has a very simple logic behind his ruling. The whole idea of Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, of going up each night is so people know this is the second night of Hanukkah, this is the 8th night of Hanukkah. How do they know? They see 8 candles. But if 10 people in your family are lighting 8 candles, it was the 88th night of Hanukkah. How are they supposed to know how many candles are lit? How are they supposed to know what night it is? So once you start, in other words, taste is something very logical. If the only idea of is to know what night of Hanukkah, publicize the night of Hanukkah, this is the 8th day of the miracle, which is saying, wow, the oil lasted, this is now the 8th day it lasted. How are you going to be able to tell if you're going still like the Mahadran and you're still lighting like everyone in the family? But Rambam rejects that, and he says, no, it's an addition. And so we have a typical machlekes amongst Ashkenazi Rishonim versus Sephardi Rishonim, which usually splits like the party line. The Ashkenazim follow Tosfos, and the Sephardim follow the Rambam, as we see with many, many things. But here we see something very special, and that is that in the Shulchan Aruch, compiled by the Mechaber, and the glosses written by the Ramah, the Mechaber, who represents the rulings for Sephardim, rules like Tosfos, that only one person lights per family. And you go up each night. So only one menorah in every home. One. Even today, if a Sephardi couple is going to their in-laws for Shabbos, they will give a dime to their father or father-in-law and join their lighting. They won't light on their own. Or they'll be Yitz's bracha and light somewhere else. At Kedei Kach, they're very careful not to light in addition to the father. So they're following Tosfos. While Ashkenazim, the Ramah writes in the Shulchan Aruch that we follow the Rambam. We light, in addition that each family member lights, also meaning the males, in addition we also add one more every single night, and to take care of the worry of Tosfos, who says that, hey, and then you can't tell what day of Hanukkah it is, that's where you're supposed to light in different places. It shouldn't be all together. So one for a person lights by this door, the other by that door, everyone lights somewhere else. So then you can tell by each place. The Rabbi points out, based on this, that this is not a coincidence. This is to show us that in truth, all Jewry, all the Jewish people, are all serving God and are all following one Torah. That one Torah has a different prescription in specific areas of Halacha for different groups. So everyone agrees that you need to eat in order to have strength, but everyone has a different amount that they should eat and different foods that they should eat depending on their body, depending on their health system. And the so too it is with Halacha. Even though in general 613 mitzvahs applies to everybody alike, and most details are similar to everyone alike, there are minor details, which sometimes we turn into major topics of debate, but they're really minor in comparison to everything we do have in common, but which Sephardim and Ashkenazim differ. And comes along Hanukkah and teaches us this isn't that the Sephardim and Ashkenazim have two different Torahs. Here we switch back. The Sephardim take from the Ashkenazim take from the Sephardim, to show that it's all kosher, it's all Torah Moshe Messina, and everyone respects their tradition, their custom. So it's actually interesting because on this subject itself, we find people who haven't learned this lesson, and you have Rosh Hashivas who tell their Sephardi pupils to light Hanukkah candles against their custom. They follow Tosfos not to light. And you have Sephardim who put down the Ashkenazi custom of that every male family member lights. So what in essence are they doing? They don't even realize it. The Ashkenazi Rosh Hashivas who are telling the Sephardim to do like the Ashkenazim are really telling them to do like the Sephardim, because that's how the Rambam rules. While the Sephardim who are bashing the Ashkenazim for doing like the Ashkenazim really tell them to follow the Ashkenazim. So it's a little, did you follow that?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a little funny. But the point is that the lesson, the whole point of that was, is for us to learn that it's all Torah, it's all kosher, and everybody has their traditions, and those traditions should be respected. Our next lesson. So in that same Gemara, we find a dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding how the Mahadrin Mina Mahadrin should be fulfilled. We said Mahadrin means that you light in accordance to the nights. so people know what night it is. The question is, you can go up to down or down to up. You can start off 1, then 2, then 3, or start off 8, then 7, then 6. So Beis Shammai, as we know, is of the opinion you start off with a lot and you decrease each night. You go from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And Beis Hillel is of the opinion that you work your way up. You start with 1, 2, 3, etc. And of course, as we know, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in the Mishnah, we always follow the rulings of Beis Hillel, not of Beis Shammai. And it's not like someone can say, well, I'm going to choose to follow Beis Shammai. I like Beis Shammai, nobody gives him any credit, nobody does anything like him. I'm going to be the one. Us Jews, we always like being different, right? Going against the tide, going against the majority in many things. So he wants to do like Beis Shammai. It's forbidden, it's also to do like Beis Shammai. You're not allowed to. As that is showing, that's telling Beis Hillel as if that his opinion is not Torah. It's saying that the tradition of Judaism doesn't follow Beis Hillel. And therefore we find in the Mishnah in Maseches Brachos, the Mishnah in Brachos states, it's discussing the position of how to read the Shema. Beis Hillel says you read the Shema in any position you want. Walking, standing, sitting, lying, whatever you want. It's all good. Beis Shammai, we have a verse, B'shach b'chov kumecha. The night Shema has to be read, B'shach b'chov, when you're lying down. If you don't read it lying down, you're not Yaitzeh. That's not how you're supposed to read it. Uv kumecha means you have to be standing up when you read the morning Shema. Beis Hillel says back, what are you talking about? You're misinterpreting the verse. B'shach b'chov kumecha is talking about the time that people go to sleep and the time that people rise. It's not referring to a position of reading. And the final ruling, of course, follows Beis Hillel. That's how we rule in Shulchan Aruch. Now, what about if somebody says, listen, I just asked Beis Hillel. He says he's totally fine if you read Kriya Shema standing up. He says all positions are okay, including standing. So let's just do like Beis Shammai. We'll all stand, and everybody will be happy. Right? Doesn't that make the most sense? Make everybody happy, make Beis Shammai happy as well. So Rabbi Tarfon was of this approach until what happened to him. And he decided to lie down during the nighttime Shema while he was on the road, and he endangered his life with robbers. And the Chachamim then said to him, Rabbi Tarfon, Kedai ha'isa lachav ba'atzmacha pnei she'asita kedivrei Beis Shammai, because you didn't do like Beis Shammai. You didn't do like Beis Hillel because you did like Beis Shammai. It was justified that your life was put in jeopardy. And we find the Alter Rebbe writes, unbelievable. Alter Rebbe writes, when he writes this halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, he writes, and one who stands specifically to say Shema, in the morning Shema standing, to do like Beis Shammai, chayev misa. Now, why chayev misa? That's kind of tough.
I met a lady in Oldham, and I think she was always in a reform situation, and she went to a shul one day that wasn't reform, and she said to me, so Ruth, why did they sit down to say the Shema? I've never seen anything like it. I said, what do you mean?
Yeah. Wow. So, thank you for bringing that up. We see clearly over here that once you make one change, there's no telling where the other changes will be. Even a change to be machmir, if it's against the party line, if it's against what the Chachamim have established, what is the Halacha, there's no telling what that will lead to. So now it sounds all holy and sounds all good and fine, but in truth, this can be the beginning of a downfall. So bottom line is that we follow Beis Hillel. Now, one of the things that the Rebbe points out that we learn from this is that while Beis Hillel is the proper approach, there is a divine lesson we can learn from Beis Shammai as well. Beis Hillel is referring to how a Jew is to grow spiritually, grow in his closeness to God, in religion, and that's step by step. Don't start off with a bomb. 8 candles, first night. You don't start off with a person who is deciding, that's it, I'm becoming a Baal Tshuva, I see the light, boom, all 613 in one night he takes upon himself. It's an explosion. That's called Shviras HaKelim. And we see this happening. We see this happening with Baal Tshuvas. Baal Tshuvas become very excited right away. They want to do everything, and that's very good. But it has to be coached properly. It has to be, in the Rebbe's words in the Sikha, step by step. A person can't take upon themselves everything in one shot because the animal soul won't handle it. And the godly soul also may be too much light. So it has to be done gradually. That's what we learn from Beis Hillel. The Kedusha, no one expects you to be already 8 in the beginning. And we discussed this in length in a few different settings of how Hashem doesn't expect one to, right now, have knowledge and fulfill every iota of what's written in Shulchan Aruch. Because there's so much to learn. How can you already know and fulfill everything now? It's a lifetime work. Every single day you learn, you buy the Sfarim that are available, right? And you learn every single day, and you grow, you go to Shiurim, and the person puts his life goal into trying to reach the 8th candle. But to start off with the 8th candle right away is not possible. Also with working on one's character, it's not possible to fix everything in one night. The person has to work one by one. That's the lesson we learned Beruchnis. From Beis Hillel, sorry. What about from Beis Shammai? Beis Shammai says you do light 8 right away, right? It's funny, by the way, because Beis Shammai is the one who threw out the ger who wanted to learn the whole Torah on one foot, meaning he says you can't, it's impossible, you can't have 8 the first night. While Beis Hillel is the one who accepted him, right? Beis Hillel said that he started teaching him. What did Beis Hillel do? He taught him one halacha that from there he can then start going and reach the whole Torah. Same idea. Start off with one candle, and that can eventually lead you to reach the 8th candle. From Beis Shammai, the Rebbe points out we can learn that regarding Gashmias, a person has to be constantly decreasing. So if we're starting off with 8 fat candles, 8 fat donuts, on the first night of Hanukkah, the second night 7, the third night 6, etc.
We don't want so many donuts at the end.
That's the whole point, that Gashmias, by Taivas, a person has to work his way down, slowly decreasing. Another lesson we learn from the Hanukkah miracle. We read that we're reading this every single day in the Ala Nisa, where there was many versus the few, and the few were victorious. Ma'atim neged merubim, giborim neged chalashim. The weak and the few overpowered the many and the strong. And from this, the Rebbe points out that we see an advantage of quality over quantity. A person can view himself and say, we're the Jewish people, we are so minute amongst the nations. We're so few. And if you boil it down to the Orthodox Jews that are Mekayim Torah and Mitzvahs, that fulfill Torah and Mitzvahs, we're even fewer. We're the minority of the minority, unfortunately. Still. And if you then look at down that how many of the Torah observant Jews are going in the right direction, growing and working on themselves, where then it can be even the minority. And it can go on and on and on until, as the saying goes, you're left all by yourself. There's no one else left. I'm the only one. A lot of people feel that way.
Is that how you feel?
No, I am quite an inclusive person. I don't have. We've got to pass that level of arrogance. I think that's many years ago. But some people are still holding there. Yes. So a person would say, we're a lost cause. There's so little people working for the truth. So little people working to pursue the path of truth. And even within, let's say we have different, amongst the Orthodox world, we have different matters that are subject to debate. And a person who knows he's going in the right direction, he's doing the right thing, and there's many mitzvahs that it says, mitzvahs that are nashim dash ba'akva, things that people step on, people don't really fulfill properly. Now, there's not a machlekes of pace. Not that some say it's mutzim, it's usher. Then, of course, you can't run over someone else's opinion. You have to respect everyone's opinion. But here I'm talking about things that people just don't do properly for whatever reason, and you feel yourself in the minority. How are you going to be able to get this out? So the Rebbe says the lesson we learn from this is that it's quality versus quantity. It's not about how many people know about this truth, how many people are currently religious? How many people are currently learning Chassidus? How many people are currently doing the service of Avodas HaTfilah? That's a good example. We can use Avodas HaTfilah. Avodas HaTfilah, as it's supposed to be, we spend many hours in davening, 3-4 hours of Shachris, and working on our heart to build a love of God. How many people do that today? How many people? Not so many. No one says you're not supposed to, but people aren't doing it. So you can feel, what is it going to help? What's it going to do? So the Rebbe says that from here we learn in the Hanukkah miracle that the quality of even one individual, of even one person, can overpower the quantity of everybody else. And therefore, a person should never measure the worth of his actions versus, but I'm a lone person in the park. No one's with me on this.
No one did Avraham Avinu either.
That's a lesson from Avraham Avinu we come in, yeah. And but we know how he ended. He had a big following. Now, of course, we shouldn't use this the wrong way, what I just said. This can be used to fuel people then to have their independent ideas which are contrary to Torah Judaism and say, well, even though we're in the minority, that's what we learn from the Hanukkah miracle, that you don't have to be in the majority, it doesn't have to be accepted by the masses to be true, to win. So just like everything in life, especially in times of Gullus where light can be turned to darkness or darkness to light, people can use the lesson from the Hanukkah miracle to propose the opposite of what it's coming to do. So obviously this cannot be used for the wrong direction. It's talking about something which is true according to Torah, and the masses, for whatever reason or not, are not following. Another lesson. Going above and beyond the letter of the law of the Shulchan Aruch. There are two different attitudes towards Judaism. One is that Halacha is a book of guidance where we're being told how to do God's commands. And as long as you do the basics, as long as you do the minimum of what's written, you're good. As long as the mitzvah is kosher, it's a kosher esrog, it's kosher tefillin. As long as it's somehow okay with God, then it's okay with you as well. In other words, the Shulchan Aruch is basically to teach you how do you feel the basics of being a loyal Jew to God. And from there you can then focus on other things such as college, making a living, living the American dream, and have a backpack of Judaism. In other words, Judaism is not what is leading your life. It's not your focus. It's just like, a citizen follows country laws, the laws of his country. It's not his whole life he's filled with being a patriot. His whole life he's not thinking about, wow, I can't wait to represent my country and to fight for my country. And all day he's thinking about those things. Those people today, what do we call them? Lunatics, right? The people, they have the flags and everything, and all day they're talking about, we call them white supremacists, or we call them other things, right? So, relax. Follow your American dream, live life to the fullest, enjoy life, and be a faithful, be a law-abiding citizen at the same time. That's one approach to Judaism. Live a good life and don't break Shulchan Aruch. Another approach is that the whole idea of Judaism is to be a patriot for God. And every breath that I will take will be, am I doing the best I can to give God pleasure? Am I doing the best I can to give the Eibush to nachas ruach? And therefore, even if something is okay, it's not against the law, if I know it's not in the spirit, if I know it's not something that God would enjoy or God would want, I'm not going to do it. If it's something I know God would want me to do, I'm going to do it, even though it doesn't say it in Shulchan Aruch. Even though I don't have to. I'm not considered to be breaking the law. If I don't recruit myself to the army and fight for the country, I'm not breaking the law unless it's mandatory enlistment. But if it's not mandatory enlistment, I'm just not volunteering. I'm not breaking the law. So we see the lesson from the Hanukkah story is that a Jew has to be like the latter. He has to be that crazy white, flag-wrapped patriot. Meaning his whole life has to be encompassed with fighting for Hashem, fighting for his Torah, not just to suffice with the basics. Well, I found in Shulchan Aruch, I found a heter, it's therefore okay. To always look for a heter, to always try to find how, according to law, it'll be okay. Someone who we know this works, lahavdil alaf havdalis, in the law, in the secular law system, in the secular system of lawmaking, when legislators make laws, they're not the smartest people in the world. There's no lack of respect to anybody. They're not the smartest people in the world. And, they don't cover all the details and all the loopholes. And a good lawyer knows how to get those loopholes, how to get into those things and make the argument to the judge, and basically how to, circumvent the law system. So the Havdil, Elef Havdalos, we can have the same thing in Judaism. The Jew is taking the first approach. He can try to find a way to always try to make things mutter, always try to get out. Because for him, Judaism is a burden. It's like the laws of the country. It's just a burden. I really don't want it, but I respect Uncle Sam. I respect Uncle Sam. I respect the Constitution. So therefore, I don't want to break the law. So I'll get a good lawyer to explain how when I'm breaking the law, I'm really not breaking the law. So when I'm doing something that's clearly against halacha, we find a way how it's not against halacha. And Rachmana litzlan, we see how this type of philosophy can begin with some innocent things, which maybe even have upon what to rely. It could begin with something very innocent. It could even begin with something the majority of people are lenient in. But you, your family, your Hasidic group, your sect of Judaism is stringent. And you now want to follow the lenient approach. So no one's bad-mouthing the lenient approach. It has what to rely on halacha. But why are you looking for the lenient approach? Where's the direction the person is going on? Let's take Chalav Yisrael, for example. Many Jews who are observant eat products and drink products which are not Chalav Yisrael, based on a heter that was given by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in the early 60s regarding that the necessity of supervision of Gentile milk today is fulfilled by governmental supervision. Not everyone agrees to his opinion, that's another debate, but let's just say Rabbi Moshe was a great Pesach. Certainly not reform. He was very against reform. He fought the battles against conservative reform. He was on the forefront of jury of that. And certainly that is an opinion, and we cannot negate Rabbi Moshe. Does that mean we have to accept it? Absolutely not. We're very careful to eat Chalav Yisrael. But those Jews who are not careful, they have upon whom to rely. Now, if somebody who his whole life kept Chalav Yisrael now say, well, I heard Rabbi Moshe says it's mutter, so therefore I'm going to start eating Chalav Akum. So it could be just a mistake. So there happen to be many other poskim who argue on him, also Gedalia poskim, and they also argue on the basis of his heter, not to mention Rabbi Moshe himself said, this is only in a time of need, it's not meant for Yerushalayim people to follow, etc. But nonetheless, a person who wants to do this, we can't say he's going against halacha because Rabbi Moshe was a posik of a very high stature. On the other hand, this shows a general approach. Where's this person heading? Where's the train going? Where's this guy going? Why does he suddenly want to leave something that's been done by Jews since its inception, Chalav Yisrael, keeping Chalav Yisrael? We don't know exactly when it took place, but possibly already in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. And now the person wants to go ahead and go down and start eating Chalav Akum. And this can then lead to making, and this is how it is. This is not, we're not playing now, I'm not describing something of fantasy. I'm describing a reality that we see in people. That when they're asking, Rabbi, can I start eating Chalav Akum? That's not really what they're asking. What they're asking is, Rabbi, can I take the second approach of Judaism? Can I take the first approach that we mentioned earlier? That Judaism is, I don't want to feel bad, I want to go to Gan Eden, I want to do the basics, but God is not my primary interest. My primary interest is the American dream, live a good life and enjoy. How do we learn that from the story of Hanukkah, how the first approach has to be taken? The approach that a person makes God his primary focus. Well, if the Chashmonaim would have taken the approach where live a good life and do the basics so you don't break the law, we wouldn't have a Hanukkah miracle. Something happened?
Anymore.
Something good happened?
Bullshit.
we wouldn't have the Hanukkah miracle. We wouldn't have the Hanukkah story. Why not?
Did it say it's charging?
You may have to restart it if it stopped in the middle. Okay.
Didn't start. It didn't stop.
If you open up a Shulchan Aruch, Yeridei Yasim and Kufman Vav, learn there the laws of Mesiras Nefesh. Where does it say there that when the Greek nation, or any Gentile nation, is oppressing you, making decrees against doing laws, doing mitzvahs, that you have to go out of your way and do the mitzvahs in their face and fight them, a war that, according to all statistics, is a guaranteed loss. Guaranteed loss. Where does it say Shulchan Aruch do that? It says that if a Greek Assyrian comes, if Antiochus, Nicanor, Bigram, any of these people come, put a knife to your head and say, your life or the pig, slaughter the pig and eat it and slaughter Tavedah Zarah, you have to give up your life, you're right. But if you didn't come along and do that, I don't have to go ahead and kill him. I don't have to put my life in danger and wage a war against them. So all those who follow the approach of Judaism, which is live a good life, just do the basics, don't get too into things, don't become a fanatic, don't become a religious fanatic, do the basics, live a good life, enjoy life, go to the ball game, read novels, watch movies, and you also put on tefillin in the morning, join a minyan. So with this attitude, that's what they would have done, and that's what many Jews did. That's why the Hashmonayim were in the minority. There were a lot of American dream Jews living then. And only a few brave people took the approach where, no, we're fighting for Hashem, and even if the Shulchan Aruch doesn't obligate us, we're doing the basics as we're supposed to, we're going to be proactive about Judaism. And this is the approach that we learn, how a person has to go above and beyond the Shulchan Aruch and try to fulfill the spirit of the law and go in the right direction. While the opposite approach, it may start off very innocently, it unfortunately is a train heading in places that who knows where it's going to take us to. We have a very current example of this happening right now with the open Orthodox movement, which in truth, to be intellectually honest, is neoconservative, which is a movement that began with people with yarmulkes who are Shomer Shabbos, keep kosher to whatever standard, but they are. They're observant Jews who decided to break certain protocols in certain areas. With sources, of course. Sources. They brought sources down for what they're doing. They weren't just saying, well, you don't have to believe in Judaism, Torah is not from Sinai. It didn't start off that way. It started off as religious people, just like me and you, religious individuals, making a small break in tradition and finding halachic or Torah basis for whatever they're doing. And it was a small snowball that started 15, 20 years ago, and the snowball just kept growing and growing and growing. Open Orthodoxy. Until, if you don't know about it, then great. Better not to know about it. If you do, then it's important for you to know what it is and call it out for what it is. Just because someone wears a yarmulke and keeps Shabbos doesn't make him Orthodox. The Rambam has a very clear halacha in Mishnah Torah. Judaism is 613 commands, not one more and not one less. If a person says, I keep all 612, everything to the finest detail, mahadrim min mahadrim, but I don't believe in the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKein. I don't believe it. I'm against God giving that mitzvah. I don't believe in that mitzvah. What are you doing, sending away the mother, the poor mother, the final seconds it can be with its children? It's so cruel. I don't believe in this mitzvah. Well, I don't do Afrashas Challah. Why should I give these kain? You ever see these kain? And I hate these people. I can't stand them. I don't believe in Afrashas Challah. Truma, I don't believe in Truma. Such a person, I'll be kayos, I'll be tired. But he's keeping 612. Give him a break. So call him 6/12 of a kosher Jew. 612 out of 613 of a kosher Jew. Says the Rambam is not because the Torah is a full package of 613. We don't add and we don't subtract. A guy who comes to do Geirus, and he's very smart, very learned, he accepted 612 of 613 mitzvahs. Everything. Except one. In fact, he's even doing all 613, but he tells the Bezdin, I'm not covering when it's a woman. I'm not covering my hair when I'm married. I don't believe in that mitzvah. I believe it's imposing on women. I believe a woman should be allowed to express themselves. I don't believe in that mitzvah. I'm not covering my hair. Paskins or Moshe Feinstein, the same Moshe that they bring for the Chalavakim. Same person. A pure guy. The person remains a guy. They did Geiris, they Toivel, they did everything, they remain a guy. Because they didn't have Kabbalah mitzvahs. What do you mean? They accepted all 613. One detail, a detail they didn't do. Covering the hair is deraisa. It's one thing for her to say, listen, I believe in everything, I want to do everything, but this is very hard for me. Okay, we all have struggles. We all have struggles. And we just learned before, like Beis Hillel, we go in steps. So I'm not there yet. That's okay. No one's blaming you. That's fine. That's amazing. You're working your way up. That's fine. But to come out philosophically, by Ashkafa, that I believe you don't have to do this, that's already kfirah.
I didn't think a guy could work the way up. I think they thought they'd take everything on the mikveh.
They have to take upon everything in mikveh. That's what Moshe says. Since they didn't take upon... If they explicitly... It says like this. If the woman... She didn't even know that you have to cover the hair, let's say. And later on when she found out, she says, oh my gosh, I don't believe in this mitzvah. So now they're a Jewish kaifer. They're not a guy. But if at the time of the process of conversion, they already then were denying one of the mitzvahs of Hashem, they lost the primary ingredient necessary to convert. And therefore, it's so important for us not to be fooled by the Yetzer Hara and try to turn our sins into mitzvahs, or try to turn our sins into morally acceptable. We have struggles. We're not all the way there yet. That's fine. It takes time, and no one's blaming anybody. But don't come out and say, oh, this mitzvah is not necessary. We don't need to do this. We can change this. So this idea of where it started with a small turn from tradition, which, by the way, of course, not to mention that Haredi jury came out against right away, but that's not even to talk about. Modern Orthodox jury came out against the OU, came out against them. The RCA, Rabbinical Council of America, the largest group of Orthodox rabbis in the world, came out against them. They were students of the RCA, this fringe group. It started as a fringe group. And it snowballed over the years to the point that now we have in their yeshiva, that's what they call it. I would call it a seminary or call it a theology center. But in their yeshiva, which they teach Gemara and they teach Halacha, it's very confusing because they don't look like your regular Reformed Jew. They put on tefillin every day. And there's many good mitzvahs they do. And Chas v'shalom, not to belittle anything good that they're doing. It's not personal. But just to see his history, how we see history plays itself on again and again and again. When a person goes on and makes a slight change from tradition, he's going in the direction of bringing Torah closer to you instead of bringing yourself closer to Torah. Dilute the Torah so it's more tasty, which is basically their position. There's no end to where it takes us. And right now we have a major rabbi, considered in their world a major posek, one of the greatest Talmud Chacham. The Rosh Yeshiva of the yeshiva stated that he's the greatest Talmud Chacham I've ever met since Rabbi Soloveitchik. Writes how the Torah is just a story that was made up to teach us nice divine lessons in Avodas Hashem. But there really was no Moshe, there was no Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They really never existed. Well, this is where it goes, unfortunately. So we have to be, that's why we're so careful, even if it's a little change from tradition. Where is this going? Why do you want to follow Rabbi to start eating Chalavakim? Why do you want to look in the Shulchan Aruch to see that you're pater from doing this mitzvah? Where is this heading? Where's your mind at? Now, the reason why people take this approach is because it's based on a fundamental flaw, that they don't view Judaism as an all-encompassing part of life. A part of life that your whole focus is on God, is on spirituality, is on giving nachas ruach to the Eibishter and doing the right thing. Judaism is viewed as I said, following the laws of the country, but ad kan. Until here, enjoy life, have fun. Do everything else. And the dangers of that approach is what leads to then these things happening. Hashem b'chayzer them b'tshuva. Nothing personal, of course. I got recently involved in this because a member of one of these open Orthodox synagogues, neoconservative synagogues, which, just to mention, by the way, anyone who knows the history of conservative, in the 1900s, late 1800s, 1907, Solomon Schechter, this is how it went. This open Orthodox is literally followed. It's as if they read the history book and said, okay, we're going to do exactly what they did. We're going to follow the same steps again.
They
And
were a response to the reform movement.
what's that?
The conservative movement was a response to the reform movement.
Yes, but it was a breakaway from the OU of its time.
Yeah.
And they separated. They had to create the theology center, and it started off with very simple things like giving women aliyahs. That's how it started off.
Yeah.
That's what it was about.
And
It's
it's
not
also
simple.
come to God didn't write
What's
the
that?
Torah.
That's not simple,
What do you mean?
giving a woman aliyah.
Yeah, they wrote a whole tshuva. I actually went through it. I did a lot of research on this. They wrote a whole tshuva. It's actually, if you're not learned, you look at this 50-page halachic response about giving women aliyahs, you're like, wow, you can't say they're not religious people. Look at them. They didn't just say, well, we don't believe in this. They went through the Talmud and give all this. But that's what you have to. It's a very exactly. The Yetzer Hara. Yeah, it's very. Sometimes it's very tricky. That's where the line is. Are you breaking tradition? Are you breaking tradition, or are you not breaking tradition? Even within halacha, a person can find 400 reasons to permit eating the sheretz. The Gemara says. So it's a different type. At least the good thing about the reform movement, the conservative movement, is at least you can call a spade a spade. They tell you we're not orthodox. We don't follow tradition. We do not. We have changed things, and great. So at least we agree on something. You agree you change, and you agree you change. Then we all agree that we can't change to become you. Great, okay. But when you call yourself kosher, when you're not kosher, that's what makes things so confusing for people. And that's why it has to be spoken out against. That people shouldn't be fooled.
Yeah, what's the difference between modern Orthodox and this, what you're calling it?
Open or what they call
Open
themselves. It's not what I
Orthodox.
call them. They call themselves open. Well, the leaders of the modern Orthodox world, the heads of the RCA, the heads of the OU, have all come out against them. And while there are some similarities, such as the approach that I just said before, in the approach, unfortunately, where Judaism is not necessarily encompassing of the whole life, where it's, that's the attitude a lot of people in modern Orthodox. I myself grew up as modern Orthodox. That's the mentality we grew up with. And that one leads to another, but they never took the steps of breaking tradition as did the Open Orthodoxy. Open Orthodoxy took steps to do things that is not accepted amongst Orthodox Jews. Modern Orthodox may follow some lenient approaches and lenient opinions, but they don't say that a mitzvah in the Torah is no longer a mitzvah. They don't say that you can go ahead and not have a mechitza in a shul.
How can you call that then? They're really not open Orthodox. They're something else.
100%. They're not Orthodox at all, and that's why it's really a fake name.
A misnomer.
The real name is neoconservative, or conservative of 1907. Now it's already past that. I already said one of their top teachers in the theology center in Riverdale is preaching that, the Torah is not from Sinai. So they actually had an interview with the dean of the yeshiva. And they confronted the dean on an interview on the radio. They said, do you know that this student said this and this and this? And the dean was saying, well, I know it sounds horrible and I disagree with him and I don't believe in it, and maybe he's just saying it to be makarev people. Can you believe such a thing? To be makarev people? What are you makarev someone teaching kfira? Makarev what? But this was the answer. So these are people that are, for sure they have good intentions. They're very misguided. A lot of them are, I'm sure they're good Jews and they do a lot of good things, but very misguided. And and the movement is a danger. It's a danger because if it was bringing reform and conservative people to start adapting more mitzvahs and doing more things, and it's just they're still keeping to the policies, some of the policies of reform and conservatives, so I can understand. That's one thing. But here it's bringing Orthodox people down. It's very different. So not even in this situation, I had someone applied for my smicha program from one of these institutions, and I had to go ahead and do research on it. And basically, in this shul, which is part of Open Orthodoxy, they don't have the mechitza. Women put on tefillin on Rish Chodesh. They make women minyanim, and one thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And this is one of the lessons that we learn is that a Jew has to be proactive about Judaism, protect tradition, and not look for ways out. Not look for ways out, and it's so unfortunate that people don't learn from history. I mean, we've had this trial so many times in our history of people thinking they know better. It's time to change. It's time to adapt Judaism to the times. And what has happened to them? Where have they ended up? Start off with the tzaddikim, start off with kairach, where have they all ended up? Why do we have to repeat mistakes? Anyways, okay.
Because we have
So
short memories.
what do you do with him? You can't let him into your program because then.
Well, obviously, of course I didn't let him. I told him, listen, either you break ties and decide to follow an Orthodox lifestyle, or get smicha from them.
Yeah.
He's a good Jew. He's a very good Jew. This individual, very sincere. We just didn't know. He was misguided. It's tricky. It's very tricky. They don't know. When you hear someone, where's a yarmulke? He talks the talk. The rabbi talks the talk. It's not that he doesn't talk the talk. He talks the talk. He walks part of the walk. So it's very confusing when just in one or two areas the breakage begins, and then you never know where it leads to. At the same time, this does not a reason to make machlekes, but nonetheless, it has to be called out for what it is, and people have to be aware. So, this is one of the lessons that the Rebbe points out, again, from the story of the Chashmonayim. And I want to back that also with a story that happened in Russia. In the 1930s, they had elections in Moscow for the chief rabbi of Moscow. Now, as you can imagine, as any election in general, there's always politics. There's always, everyone wants their candidate to win. When there's more than one candidate, and in Rabbanis, it's no different. Now, in Russia, especially, this was very sensitive subject because the two candidates of Moscow one was a prodigy, an alumni of the Litvish yeshiva system from Slobodka. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Clemens, and the second was the other main group of orthodoxy that was in Moscow was the Chabad Lubavitch, and they had their Rav, Rabbi Rafal Khan. He was the candidate for Rabbanos. So it was a big battle. Posters being put up. I'm sure there was some lashon hara in the mikveh going on, maybe even outside the mikveh. I don't know, but I'm sure like a regular election, everyone was really into it. And they had meetings, and of course it was the Chassidim versus the Misnagdim, same old story that repeats itself so many times by elections, just this past one. And billboards were going up for the Chassidish Rav. And let's not forget, we're talking about a time where Stalin Russia, Judaism is on the brinks of collapse. There's tremendous persecution, and we all know that the rabbi, if he's not made of guts of steel, he will collapse to become a puppet of the Stalin state. Basically to be used to destroy Judaism and just give it a kosher stamp, right? Instead of defending Judaism. So the Chassidim viewed this as the war of all wars. This was the campaign of all campaigns, the election of all elections. The future of Moscow Jewry and Moscow, the capital of Russia, the whole Russia is now in the forefront. Will we have a puppet rabbi, what was called back then Rav Mitan, meaning from the state, or will we have an independent, strong, chassid-minded, Mesiras Nefesh Dikarav? So the Chassidim took the side of the Chassidish candidate and the Misnagdim of the Misnagdish candidate, of the Litvish candidate. A few days prior to the election, one of the Askanim who were involved in the bid of his the candidacy of the Chassidish Rav, he visited the Rebbe Rayatz in Riga. The Rebbe Rayatz was in Riga then, Latvia. And he spoke to them about a few things, but of course they came to speak about the elections and to get the Rebbe's bracha to win, and what they can do to... So the Rebbe Rayatz told him something that made him fall off his chair. He said, I think you should all campaign for the Litvish candidate.
What?
The Litvish Rav. Yeah. The Rebbe Rayatz told him campaign for the Litvish Rav. Drop the candidacy of the Befol Khan and campaign for the Litvish Rav. He was shocked. Shocked. I mean, it made no sense in any way. Today, it would really make no sense. the Litvische Gadol says to vote for Chas v'Shalom, the Chassidish candidate. Chas v'Shalom, better to vote for someone not even from a Witz Chazir than to vote for the Chassidish candidate. Of course, we see that happen today. But back then, the Rebbe Rayat said, don't vote for my Chassid, the Chassidish will vote for the Shem. Nobody understood why, but Chassidim don't ask questions. It's not like you sit there as a skanim today, but do you know? And then you get your answer out in the end of the day. You get it out. You know your way how to windle it out. You get it out. But Chassid doesn't work that way. The Rebbe says, you don't even ask why. You don't even say, can you repeat that? You know? I didn't hear. You know? A Chassid with trepidation takes the word of God, takes the Divrei Elokim Chaim from the Rebbe, and brings it home to Moscow. He comes home and he says, the Rebbe Rayatz, you won't believe what he just said. The campaign is off. We're all voting for the Litvische candidate. So, do you think that the Chassidim in Moscow took this lightly? They were just like by Kriyas Yamsuf, there were 4 groups here. There were 4 groups. One group said, let's kill the Chassid. Not kill him, but let's put him away for a few days until the campaign's over. Another said he must be insane. He must have lost his marbles. He became a shaita. He must have misunderstood. This can't be. Another said, well, maybe he didn't explain it right to the Rebbe Rayatz, the situation. And they called a huge meeting for all the different leaders of the Chassidim to discuss what's going to happen. And everyone's saying their opinion, the 4 groups, until one Chassid gets up. His name was Reb Baruch Shalom Khan. And Reb Baruch Shalom Khan, he gets up and he lifts a chair. He walked into the meeting and you saw what's going on. He lifts a chair and he says, one more word against that we're not following what the Rebbe Rayat said, and this chair will be over your head.
Wow.
So the Rebbe Rayat said it. That's exactly what we're going to do, and stop all the discussions. And everyone took his lead, and so it was that the election came. The candidacy of Rafal Khan was withdrawn, and Rabbi Yaakov Klemens was elected as the chief rabbi of Moscow. But everyone remained wondering, why? Why did the Rebbe Rayat? It wasn't like, there was a special deal. Well, he has money, and he's going to give my maestris money. All of these krum, all of these false and bribery type calculations which occur today in politics, that was not what was going on in the Rebbe Rayatz's head. What was going on, they don't know, but we do know this happened. A Lubavitcher Chassid was one of the Bnei Bayis of the home. He was in charge of ushering people in by this Rav's house, and the Chassidim put him there because they understood that the Rebbe Rayatz must see something special in this Rav to have chosen him. And he related the following. He related that the following story, the following episode. That one time a Jew came in. A Pasha Yid came in, but a Shemer Shabbos, Shemer Torah Mitzvahs. And he came in and he asked the Rav for a heter to be able to work on Shabbos. Basically, the government, it was communism, which means you don't have your own jobs. You can't decide what you work in. You get given a job by the government. And these jobs require working on Saturdays. No such thing as Saturdays off. If you want to take Saturdays off, the government viewed you. You must be an anti-revolutionist. You must be anti-Stalin. What the connection is, I don't know, but that's what they said. You don't want to work. You just want to be a parasite. So basically, you had to work. And there was a big Nisayin. There were many, even Rabbanim, Nachman al-Islam, who worked on Shabbos. Worked on Shabbos because of this. It was a big Nisayin for him. So he came in and he said, Rabbi, I will not break Shabbos. So he's coming in for a heter, right? But he says, can you find a way? And the Rav basically sat down with him for an hour. And this chassid is listening. He sat down with him, went through everything, his work schedule. What do you do when you arrive? And he basically gave him a recipe of how he can avoid doing malacha, actual, forbidden malacha, throughout the time that he's working. And he found all the different atayim for how he can work.
Wow.
Came in another individual a few days later. This was a Chabad chassid, that learned in Tmimim. Was a working Jew. Everybody had to work. You didn't get food if you didn't work. You didn't get stamps. And he came in with the same shaila. I have a job, and this is the thing. But he was a Talmud Chacham, this individual. He didn't come in as a simple Jew just saying, Rabbi, this is the situation, is there any heter? He already came with the heter prepared. He had a whole paper aligning the details that this is this, this is this, this is this, this is this, these places, sign here. Mutter for me. You wanted to get that spiritual approval of the Rav. The Rav took the paper, lifted it, he looked at it very nice, tore it to shreds, and he told him, from me, you're not going to get any heter. You can't work on Shabbos. So this chassid was bewildered, the chassid who was listening, because he knew this Rav just the other day found the loopholes. What happened here? The guy himself found the loopholes already. All the Rav had to do was give his stamp of approval. So he asked in front of, the audience was still taking place, and he asked, Rabbi, just a few days ago you went ahead and you approved someone else in a similar situation, and he said, this individual learned in Tenchet Mimim, he's on the forefront of fighting for Judaism. If I say he can work on Shabbos, there'll be nothing left of Shabbos. Nobody will stand up. There will be no Chashmanoim. So just because we found a loophole according to Halacha doesn't mean that it's in the spirit of God. And he told him he can't do it. So Chassidim said that the Rebbe saw this in this Rav, and in truth, this Rav did stand up to Stalin, and in the end, he was incarcerated by the KGB. He was placed under tremendous suffering. He was interrogation of the Russian methods, which I don't have to elaborate on, quite painful. And in the end, he managed to escape and emigrate to Eretz Yisrael. But he did stand for the years that he was chief rabbi. He did stand for Judaism and not give in to the... So we see here a few things. First of all, we see the idea that we pointed out from the Hanukkah miracle, which is that Judaism is not about make sure you follow the line of halacha. As long as you have a way out that it's according to halacha, you're good. Don't always look to be lenient. Don't always look to find a way out. Don't try to run away from God and run towards the animal soul and give him the most pleasures that he can get, or whatever he wants to get, in a way that's mutter with the stamp of the Rav.
What is this man's name? I know it because I read a book about him.
This rabbi
Yeah.
of Moscow,
Yes.
Rabbi Yaakov Kleeman. There were a few chief rabbis of Moscow.
Okay.
There was another one, Rabbi Levin. There were a number of them. They didn't last long under Stalin. It was like the Kohen Gadol position in times of the second Beis Hamikdash. Unfortunately.
I think he was somebody else. I can't remember. He wrote a book. There was a book with him.
There was a Rabbi Silver. There was Zilber. There was Rabbi Zilber in Russia. Rabbi Abramsky. There are a number of Litvisher.
He ended up in Kfar Chabad, I think.
Oh, Bezer Nanas. There's many people. Many people. Russia was the most populated Jewish area back then. So there were, of course,
they all were Mesiras Nefesh.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Total Mesiras Nefesh. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
How many of us today would do that? Something is inconvenient.
You know what? Even if we're not on that level and we look and it says, we would never do that, at least we should appreciate it. At least we should, that's the right thing. That's the right direction. I want to one day reach that. I want to one day be there, I'm not there yet. How many of us say, B'chol Me'idech and Shema? Are you really willing to give up all your money for God? All of it? Really? You mean like become destitute, your house, your savings, everything for God? Maybe some of us will say yes, and they really will, but maybe some of us won't. And that's okay, but, we want to reach there. At least, we want to be there. The Beis Yosef, Yosef Karo, he wanted to do Mesiras Nefesh. He was waiting to do Mesiras Nefesh, to give up his life for the sake of God. He was so happy when his Maggid promised him, you'll finally be able to merit it. In the end, he didn't merit it because of a certain reason. As a punishment, he didn't merit Mesiras Nefesh. But he wanted it. He was looking forward. He didn't look at it as oh my gosh, terrible. I can't believe I have to do Mesiras Nefesh. He was looking for Mesiras Nefesh. Stop. In any event, at least, we're not on these levels, but at least we can learn to appreciate these levels and not try to run away. Okay, I'm going to leave the rest of it, maybe we'll leave for next week or another time. Let's do a few halachas. We were in the midst should say the conclusion of chapter 2 in Shulchan Aruch, going through the laws of clothing, getting dressed. Does anyone remember the halacha we concluded with 2 weeks ago? It was a halacha that has to do with forgetting.
Well, don't put two things on at the same time. Don't put things inside out.
Oh, no, taking off your clothes, or not, don't take off your clothes with double layer.
Yes,
Or you
yes,
do
yes,
that, or
very
you
good.
don't do that.
Very good.
And about the way you're buried.
Yes, okay, good. So that's where, yes, very amazing. That's where we concluded. It's pretty good. They usually say, once I read a whole book on memory, and they write over there that in a class, when you hear a class or when you're learning, not just class, when you're hearing from me, from anybody, or when you are reading a book, you usually always remember the beginning and the end. The middle is like a little blurry, but usually the beginning and end of a class you usually remember. It's very interesting. So, yeah, that was in the end of the class. Good. What happens if you don't remember even the end of the class?
Yeah, I was so stunned, that's why I remember. So maybe you want to do it again.
What was
Yeah,
it?
we're going to review that again.
About burial? What was the thing about burial?
Well, in our discussion of getting dressed and different things, and even in the previous discussion when we had about washing hands, there were different things brought up about how things are done during burial, how we don't do things the same. And I'll mention, if you remember, somebody here asked or stated that the reason why we skip our fingernails when we cut our fingernails is written in Shulchan Aruch, Yesh Nayagin, that we skip and we don't do it in order 1, 2, 3, but rather we first in the left hand we start off with this finger, right, this finger, the fourth finger, then the second, then we skip to, right, we do 4, we go around, we skip. The reason for that is, so they said, is because by a nifter, when someone passes away, we want to do it in the opposite way that they do it, or something like that. I don't recall exactly what, but it was some. So the truth is that a nifter, there's no one way of cutting the nails by a nifter. It doesn't say anything how to cut the nails. Number 2, we don't cut the nails of the nifter. Today we don't cut the nails. We don't cut the nails of the nifter. So
We know grooming.
we don't
That
groom.
would be grooming.
Today we don't groom. We don't groom. No. We don't cut the hair. We don't cut the nails. We clean. We don't groom. So it was also mentioned about putting on two clothes. Someone mentioned that the reason why we don't do 2 clothing at the same time is because by the nifter. So by the nifter, it's actually brought down in Seder Tara in one of the sources that it wrote on is that 2 people put on the pants together on the mace. So someone to say because by there 2 people put on together, so therefore we do not put on 2 people. 2 people don't put on the clothing at the same time. What we mentioned in that class that we had in Lent discussing this subject was that Judaism is not based on do the opposite of the corpse. Okay? Judaism is not, halacha is not, let's look at what they do for the mace and we're going to do the opposite. There's no such thing. There's no such halachas. And those things that have been Messiah, that have been tradition that people have kept, okay, go ahead. Respect the tradition and keep it. Don't impose it on others. You don't have to tell people about it. They don't have to keep it. But to respect the tradition you received, that's great. That's a good thing. But there is no source for 2 people avoiding putting clothing on at the same time, because we found in a sefer, not all svarim, there's like 50 svarim of Dinei Tara, okay, of Seder Tara, that 2 people would put on the pants at the same time. It's not a real source. So if you receive the tradition from your mama and her from her mama, then we can apply the Rashba that don't argue with the mamas. Don't start up with the bubbies. That's basically what the Rashba said. Okay, but who says I don't start with my bubby, I can start with other people's bubbies. Right? Meaning that if it's not a tradition I received, then I could put on 2 pieces. 2 people can put on 2 pieces of clothing at the same time. It's a tradition that you received. Okay, respect the tradition, but that doesn't have a source in Paiskim. That's regarding 2 people putting on at the same time. What we concluded was with 1 person putting on 2 garments at the same time. Now, not that you're putting on a shirt and pants at the same time. That's kind of hard. I don't know how that's possible. But if a person, let's say, has 2 pairs of socks that they're wearing and they're inside each other, so to put them on at the same time. Or if there's an undershirt and another shirt, you put them at the same time. Putting things on at the same time, we said it's recorded in the Shulchan Aruch based on the Magen Avram, primary sourced in the Arizal, okay, in Sifrei Kabbalah, that based on Kabbalah we're careful not to put on two pieces of clothing together, as doing so brings one to forgetfulness, shichacha. Now the reason why, what's the reason behind this? What on earth is the connection between putting on two clothing at the same time and forgetting things? So you can just blame it on Kabbalah. Well, it's Kabbalah, you don't have to understand. In Kabbalah, we don't understand anything anyway, so it's just Kabbalah. And we already discussed how Kabbalah happens to be the punching bag of all of these strange customs that we keep. Some source, some not source, and you just say, oh, it's a Pi Kabbalah. Whenever something doesn't make sense, oh, it's a Pi Kabbalah, right? So in this case, we do have an explanation. And the explanation that's recorded is in the Kisvei Arizal, the same source where the minig is brought. And also is a maimer of the Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, Admir Tzai, Teres Reish, page 30, in which he also discusses the reasons behind this minhag, behind this Kabbalistic halacha recorded in the Magen Avram and the Shulchan Aruch. And the reason is as follows. And this is what we concluded with 2 weeks ago. You are, just like you are what you eat, you are what you wear. Clothing have an effect on us. Many different things have effects on us. We're always looking for how do we change our moods? How do we be in a better mood? How do we be more spiritual, more refined? Well, it's not just about learning Musar Sfarim or about, going to a therapist. It's also about what you do, how you speak, and what you wear, believe it or not. What you wear. Clothing have a certain shayrish above, the same way we all know that the clothing doesn't exist on its own. It has godliness in it at every moment making it exist. Well, there's a godly revelation that also comes out of the clothing. Now, just like godly revelations can become invested in klipa and in the end generate evil, so too in clothing itself. A person can wear clothing of immodest clothing. A person can wear clothing that are clothing of arrogance, and those things will affect the person in that way. So as much as it's the people who make the clothing immodest, it's the clothing that make the people immodest. It works in both directions. Wearing immodest clothing will then affect that the person will have more of a tinge towards immodest behavior. It goes both ways. Not to be taken out of context, of course, where I blame the victim, and then let's be honest. It's not. No one here is blaming victims, but we are saying that there definitely is an aspect of effect by what we wear, and so in Kabbalah it's explained that clothing represents what's called an armakif, an encompassing divine light. Now, an encompassing divine light, armakif, is meant to banish klipas. It's meant to get rid of klipas. Just like physically, clothing protects us from the cold, protects us from getting bruised, right? That's why animals don't need clothing. Ever ask a dog why he doesn't get dressed in the morning? Why don't animals wear clothing? Why don't have water? They grow them. They don't need them. They grow them. Yeah. They have all the protection they need. They have their swimsuits on. They can go into the ocean. They're all set. Us humans, we're so delicate. We're so fragile. We're not built for anything. And we need protection. So we have clothing as our protection. It protects us from the sun, protects us from the cold, etc. So too spiritually, there's an arm makif that comes with clothing, which protects. It's meant to protect from the klipas, from the evil. Now, what evil? Different types of evil, different things. And therefore it's important to wear clothing that are kosher according to halacha. Now, the Arizal says like this: when you wear two clothing together, the makif, meaning when you put it on at the same time, not obviously I have a coat and something else, but when you put it on at the same time, then the encompassing divine light that's meant to be, let's say, over this jacket, okay, is concealed by this jacket, and therefore I don't get the protection. I lose the protection of the armakif. Now,
like spiritual protection?
Yeah, it's obviously spiritual. There is nothing tangible that's. There's no armakif that you can remove. Maybe with a special, those aura machines. The aura machines. Maybe we can do something with them. I don't know. But it's something. Yes, it's something spirit. It's a spiritual aura of protection, provided by your clothing, provided you don't put the two on at the same time. You put two on at the same time, you're black. Now, what does that have to do with forgetfulness? Very simple. All forgetfulness, it's explained, comes from klipa. In Kedusha, there's no such thing as forgetting. What are you forgetting? It happened to you. What do you mean you're forgetting? It's part of your life. Everything that happened in our life is part of our life. What do you mean you forgot? You learned something. What do you mean you forgot what you learned? The whole idea of forgetfulness, it says shichacha comes from klipa. It comes from evil. And when a person has clothing, he has the makif, it helps protect him from forgetting. Protect the memory. A person puts on two clothing at the same time, the encompassing light that protects him from forgetting is gone. So what happens? He forgets. So people that have had, traumas they want to forget about, they should put on two clothing at the same time. Maybe that's the best recipe.
There you go.
Regarding the other way around, so we did mention this in the last class we had on the subject. We don't find a source in Kisvei Arizal or in the Magen Avram or in the Shulchan Aruch that likewise says you should not be wearing, you should not be removing two garments at the same time. So let's say I want to take off my coat. Can I take it off like this? It's two. Can I take it off like this? So we don't find a source that says you can't. It's really about wearing. And also the Kabbalistic reason makes more sense, only when you're wearing it. When I'm wearing it, that's when I need the protection. I'm taking it off. I anyways lose the makif. I'm not wearing it anymore, so who cares if you take two off at the same time? So some poskim say, based on this, that it's really not necessary. You can take off two at the same time. It's not a problem. The whole issue is with the wearing it. However, we do find some poskim who do record this adherence. Likewise, when you are wearing that, when you are removing, you shouldn't take it off also at the same time. And the Mitter Rebbe in a Maimer also writes this. He writes, "It is a known fact that the removal of two pieces of clothing together brings one to forgetfulness." So we don't have the Kabbalistic understanding in that situation of how it works. Why does it make you forget? But nonetheless, that is what is recorded. And those who are not makbid on it, okay, they have upon whom to rely. But those who are careful on it, we're not going to just dismiss it as, it's a confusion with the minhag of not to get dressed two at a time. So based on that confusion, people started also doing not to remove two at a time. No, there is a source that's brought down that also not putting on two at a time, we also avoid doing.
We'll try to remember that.
Right. A good school to remember it is to follow.
Well, it helps you remember when you put it on again, if it's not stuck together one inside the other. So.
Right. Some examples here that are recorded is once, by a man. A man's wearing a hat and a yarmulke, and he takes off his yarmulke, or the hat flew off with the wind together with the yarmulke. He puts both back on.
Yeah.
So first take out your yarmulke, put it on, then take the hat and put it on. Which we find interestingly, by the way, that it's brought down a number of svarim that people who suffer from headaches should wear a yarmulke upside down. I don't know about women. Maybe women should wear a tichel upside down. Oh, turn it inside out.
Oh.
Like this. I've never tried it. Baruch Hashem, I don't have headaches. So, but it is brought down in a number of svarim that there is such as good. You see that there's a certain spiritual effect of clothing. Another example, let's say right now it's raining. Can you wear a plastic rain cover over your hat, and then wear that at the put it on at the same time? So it's also discussed. The two socks we already mentioned. Someone who's wearing shoes and galoshes, the rain boots. What are they called? The rain boots. What are they called?
Galoshes.
Yeah.
And a lot of
No,
times
in
you
English,
leave
in
your shoes,
English.
the old-fashioned galoshes, you left your shoes inside.
No, I know in
the
English. What do we
galoshes.
call in
Rubbers,
English?
rubbers.
Rain boots? Huh?
Rubbers.
Rubbers.
Rubber boots?
Yeah.
Over
Yeah, so what's the
Okay.
situation with that? Because they're
So,
hardly on
you think people still do that today?
little
Yeah.
kids.
Little kids? Okay, little
No,
kids.
not just.
Not just little
Now
kids.
I guess they have boots.
I thought this was out of style already.
No.
Okay. So.
Well, they even remember they had the really ugly ones for women, and they had an elastic band that went across here. And it was meant for high heels,
Yeah.
and they didn't fit high heels, but that's what they were designed for. And they were, I remember my mother had those.
So some poskim say that shoes has nothing to do with their makif. Shoes are not clothing, so you can do the shoes two at a time. It's nothing to do with their makif. Well, we didn't finish. That's the Aruch HaShulchan. Other poskim are stringent. Basically, it's a machlekes. But most poskim are lenient. They say clothing. They say shoes has nothing to do with our makif. It's not the same thing.
So you can leave your shoes in your boots.
According to many
And
approaches,
also
say
remember the
yes.
old-fashioned roller skates? You screwed them to your shoes.
Yeah.
And you had the skate key and the whole bit, man.
Before my
Once
time.
you get those on, you don't ever want to take
All
them
this
off.
before my
back on
time,
again.
Yeah.
So you just left your shoes inside the skate,
That's good.
right?
It's becoming a history class, this class.
Yeah, it's a History Channel.
Ancient
Oh my
history.
God. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
You're not that old. Okay, one more thing that's recorded regarding this is what about taking it on and off, but not completely, two at a time? I don't know. Let's say I want to, just take one out, just take one hand out and then put it back in. In other words, if you're not completely removing the clothing, can you? Let's see. A person wants to scratch his foot, so he's wearing two socks, so he wants halfway down. He's going to put down the two socks. So in such a situation where you're not actually removing it, then it's okay. It's not a problem. So you don't have to be careful in this matter. We'll
That's a
conclude with
relief.
one last halacha.
Yeah, you never know when it'll come.
One last halacha that's recorded in the Gemara in Brachas in 451a, brought in the Magen Mishnah Berurah and other Paiskim, that many are careful to follow the Talmudic warning not to have another person hand them clothing in the morning prior to prayer. You
What?
get your clothing yourself. You don't have others hand you your clothing. You rather take the clothing themselves. This is written in the Gemara, as I said in Brachas. I did not record here any reason why. The Brachas says it's due to danger of mazikin. I don't know what that means or what mazikin is referring to. What monsters come when somebody hands you your clothing, other than the person handing your clothing? I mean, what does that do? But nonetheless, this is written in the Gemara. And we have to remember, in the times of the Gemara, demons were very commonly found, and therefore many things were done to prevent demonizing, events. Have to meet demons. People would wear tefillin in the field, not to do the mitzvah, but just to protect themselves from demons. There were many demon halachas involved. Today we don't meet demons that often anymore.
We don't recognize them.
We just call them that, but we never actually, we don't meet demons. So this halacha maybe has become extinct because of that, but nonetheless, many poskim do still record it today. In other words, that there's many things written in the Talmud that it's not recorded today, and we don't follow because the demons aren't around anymore. But this is recorded, not in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, but in the other poskim, not to have others hand us the clothing, that we should go ahead and get the clothes. It's also, by the way, a good schooler for getting up in the morning and getting dressed. Someone hands you the clothing, you're still in bed, so it's...
Well, let's say maybe your husband says, would you go get my clothes for me so I can get out faster or something?
Right, so definitely in
So
the
that
time
would
of
be a
need, in the
no-no.
time of need, a person can certainly be lenient, and I think they'll get out faster if the husband chooses her wardrobe than if she has to choose it herself, right? But
But also, what about getting dressed under the covers? If you're supposed to get dressed under the
but
covers.
yeah, you have pajamas. People go to sleep today in pajamas, right? Either go to sleep in pajamas, or you can prepare your clothing from the night before.
Where did all
Some
the
people do
demons-
both.
Where did all the demons go?
Didn't the Baal
They're
Shem
right there.
Tov?
That I will not reveal.
Long time passing.
Okay,
Trolls
Freilich and
on the
Hanukkah
internet.
to everybody. Have a great week. Good Chodesh, blessed month.
Didn't the Baal Shem Tov bind all the demons?
There is such a tradition. I've also heard that. I've never seen any source material to back that. I've also heard that in the name of Shlomo HaMelech. I definitely, from my perspective, demons don't exist. They're definitely not around. How they're not around, I don't know. But in the Truvas of Hungarian Paiskim that discuss demons, they seemingly never heard of this tradition.